I never imagined my own brother would look me in the eye and lie about our fathers, while yet there I was standing in my living room staring at my phone in disbelief. The notary's voice was cautious professional, but I could hear the concern underneath. "Miss Anderson, I'm calling about the documents you signed last week. There's something unusual about them that I thought you should know before I file them with the court." My heart dropped. "What do you mean unusual?" I asked, my voice barely steady. The notary paused, then continued, "The beneficiary distribution doesn't match the original will on record, and there's a clause here that transfers your entire share to your brother Derek Anderson." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. That wasn't what Derek told me when he brought those papers to my apartment 3 days ago. He'd said they were just formalities to speed up the estate process after Dad's funeral. My hand started shaking as the realization hit me like a truck. My brother, the person I'd trusted my whole life, had just tried to steal my inheritance. I sat at my kitchen table after hanging up with the notary, my mind racing through every detail of that visit. Derek had shown up on Tuesday evening with his leather briefcase and his sympathetic smile. The same smile he'd worn at Dad's funeral 2 weeks earlier. "Taylor, I know this is hard," he'd said, pouring us both coffee, "but we need to handle the estate paperwork quickly. You know how Dad was about keeping things simple." He'd spread the documents across my table, pointing to highlighted sections. "Just standard beneficiary forms," he'd explained, his finger moving down the page. "Sign here and we can wrap this up without dragging it through probate for months." I'd been exhausted from grief, from the funeral arrangements, from fielding calls from relatives. My father's death had been sudden, a heart attack at 62, and I was still processing it. So I signed. I signed every page where Derek pointed, trusting him completely. Now, sitting alone in my apartment, I felt sick. How long had he been planning this? Had he waited for Dad to die to make his move? The next morning I drove straight to the lawyer's office. Marcus Webb had been Dad's attorney for 20 years, a gray-haired man with kind eyes who'd helped us through Mom's death 5 years ago. "Taylor," he said, warmly gesturing to a chair, but his expression shifted when he saw my face. "What's wrong?" I told him everything about Derek's visit, the documents, the notary's call. Marcus listened carefully, then pulled up Dad's will on his computer. His frown deepened as he read. "Your father's will splits everything 50-50 between you and Derek," he confirmed. "The house, the savings, the business shares, everything equal. There's absolutely no provision for one sibling to claim the other's share." He turned the screen toward me, showing me the official document. "This was filed 6 months before your father passed away." Derek knew exactly what the will said. My stomach twisted. So he deliberately lied to me. Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm afraid so. But here's the good news, the notary hasn't filed those fraudulent documents yet. That means we have time to stop this before it becomes a legal nightmare." I felt a small spark of hope. "What do I need to do?" That evening I drove to Mom and Dad's house, where Derek had been staying since the funeral. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The house looked the same as always, the blue shutters, the garden Mom had loved, but everything felt different now. Tainted. Derek's car sat in the driveway. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. He answered with that same easy smile. "Taylor, hey, come in." I didn't move. "We need to talk about the papers I signed." Something flickered across his face, confusion or maybe irritation, but it vanished quickly. "What about them?" "The notary called me," I said, watching his reaction. "She told me those documents transfer my entire inheritance to you." "That's not what you said they were." Derek's jaw tightened. "Look, Taylor, you're emotional right now. You're not thinking clearly. Those papers are exactly what I told you, standard estate documents." I felt anger rising in my chest. "Don't gaslight me, Derek. I spoke to Dad's lawyer. I know what the real will says." For a moment we just stared at each other. Then Derek shrugged. "Fine. You caught me. But honestly, Taylor, what did you think was going to happen? You were never Dad's favorite anyway." The words hit me like a slap. I turned and walked away before I said something I'd regret. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying Derek's words, his casual cruelty, his assumption that he deserved everything. By morning I'd made a decision: I wasn't going to let him win. I started making calls. First to Dad's old business partner Bill Thompson, who'd known our family for decades. "Bill, I need your help," I said when he answered. I told him what Derek had done. There was a long silence on the other end. "I'm not surprised," Bill finally said, his voice heavy. "Your brother's been cutting corners for years, Taylor. He borrowed money from the business last year without asking, claimed it was an advance on his inheritance. Your father was furious, but Derek smooth-talked his way out of it. This was news to me. Why didn't Dad tell me?" Bill sighed. "You know your father, he didn't want to cause family drama. He thought Derek would straighten out eventually. But between you and me, I think that's why he made sure the will was split exactly 50-50. He wanted to protect your share." I felt tears prickling my eyes. Dad had known. He'd known Derek couldn't be trusted, and he tried to protect me even from beyond the grave. Over the next week I became a detective in my own life. I searched through Dad's home office looking for anything that might help my case. In the bottom drawer of his desk I found a folder labeled Family Important. Inside were letters Dad had written but never sent. One was addressed to Derek, dated 3 months before Dad died. The words made my chest ache. "Son, I love you, but I'm worried about the choices you're making. Money isn't everything. Family is. Please don't let greed destroy what your mother and I built." There was another letter addressed to me. "Taylor, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've always been honest and kind, just like your mother. Don't let anyone take advantage of that kindness, especially not family. Your inheritance is yours by right. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I sat on the floor of his office holding that letter and crying. Dad had known this might happen. He tried to warn me. I carefully photographed every document in that folder, including bank statements showing Derek's unauthorized withdrawals from the family business. This was evidence. This was ammunition. Marcus called me 2 days later with news. "Taylor, I've been reviewing everything and I found something important. There's a clause in your father's will that specifically addresses fraud attempts. If either beneficiary attempts to defraud the other, they forfeit their entire share." My heart started racing. "So if I can prove Derek tried to trick me?" "You get everything," Marcus confirmed. "But we need solid proof. The notary's testimony will help, but we need more." I told him about the letters, the bank statements, Bill's testimony. Marcus was quiet for a moment, taking it all in. "This is good, Taylor. This is really good. File everything, organize it chronologically, and bring it to my office. We're going to contest those fraudulent documents, and we're going to make sure Derek faces consequences." That night I spread everything across my dining table, creating a timeline of Derek's deception. The unauthorized withdrawal starting 18 months ago. Dad's letter of concern. The rushed visit after the funeral. The lies about the paperwork. And finally the notary's call that had exposed everything. I took photos of my organized evidence, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Power. Control. Hope. The next family gathering was tense. Our Aunt Beatrice had invited everyone for Sunday dinner, a tradition Mom had started years ago. I almost didn't go, but I wanted to see Derek's face when he realized I wasn't backing down. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in Dad's old chair, acting like he owned the place. "Taylor," he said coolly. "Didn't expect to see you here." I met his gaze steadily. "I have every right to be here, Derek. This is still our family." Aunt Beatrice sensed the tension and tried to smooth it over. "Now, children, your father would want you to stick together during this difficult time." I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. Dad wanted us to honor his wishes, Aunt B. He wanted his will respected. Derek's face darkened. "Taylor's upset because she doesn't understand the legal process." "That's not what's happening here," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Derek tried to steal my inheritance. He tricked me into signing documents that would transfer everything to him." The room went silent. Aunt Beatrice looked between us, confused. "Derek, is this true?" He stood up. "Taylor's grief is making her paranoid. I'm handling the estate exactly as Dad wanted. I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the photo of Dad's real will. Then explain why this official document splits everything 50-50, but the papers you brought me gave you everything. The dinner ended badly. Half the family believed me, the other half thought I was causing unnecessary drama. But I didn't care anymore. I'd stopped seeking their approval the moment Derek betrayed me. That week I met with Marcus to officially file a contest against Derek's fraudulent documents. We also filed a separate claim citing the fraud clause in Dad's will. Your brother's going to fight this, Marcus warned me as we reviewed the paperwork. He's already hired Peter Lawson, one of the most aggressive estate lawyers in the state. Good, I said, surprising myself with my own determination. Let him fight. I have the truth on my side. Marcus smiled slightly. That's the spirit. But Taylor, prepare yourself. Estate battles can get ugly. Families say terrible things to each other. I know, I replied, thinking of Derek's comment about me not being Dad's favorite. But I'm not the one who chose this fight. Derek did when he decided to steal from me. The paperwork was filed that afternoon. According to Marcus, Derek would receive notification within 24 hours. I drove home feeling both terrified and exhilarated. There was no going back now. This was war. Derek's response came faster than I expected. My phone rang at 7 the next morning, his name flashing on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. What do you want, Derek? You filed legal papers against me, he said, his voice tight with anger. Are you seriously going to drag our family through this? You started this, I reminded him. You tried to steal from me. There was a pause, then his voice changed, became almost pleading. Taylor, come on. We're family. Dad would have wanted me to manage everything, you know that. I'm better with money, I can invest it properly, make it grow. And what would I get? A small silence. I'd take care of you, obviously. Give you an allowance, make sure you're comfortable. I felt my anger crystallize into something cold and hard. I don't need you to take care of me, Derek. I need you to honor Dad's will. He laughed, but it sounded forced. You're making a huge mistake. My lawyers are going to destroy your case. Then I guess we'll see each other in court, I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From fury. From determination. Derek had underestimated me my entire life. He'd assumed I'd be too timid, too passive to fight back. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The legal discovery process began, and it was brutal. Derek's lawyer Peter Lawson sent demand after demand for documents, emails, phone records, anything they could use to discredit me. But Marcus was ready. We provided everything they asked for because we had nothing to hide. Meanwhile, we made our own demands. We requested Derek's financial records for the past 3 years. Bank statements, credit card bills, business transactions. Derek tried to fight it, claiming privacy, but the judge sided with us. If you're contesting the will distribution, you have to disclose your financial relationship with the deceased estate, the judge ruled. When Derek's records arrived, Marcus and I spent an entire afternoon going through them. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. Derek had been stealing from Dad for years. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here and there. But in the last year the amounts had grown. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. All listed as business expenses, but none of them legitimate. Look at this, Marcus said, pointing to a credit card statement. These charges are all from luxury stores, expensive restaurants. And they're all dated after your father confronted him about the first withdrawals. I felt sick. He didn't stop. Even after Dad caught him, Derek just got better at hiding it. That weekend I met with Bill Thompson again, this time to record an official statement for the court. Bill sat across from me in Marcus's office, his weathered hands folded on the table. He looked tired, sad. I've known Derek since he was a boy, Bill began, his voice heavy. Smart kid, but always looking for shortcuts. When he started working at the company 5 years ago, your father was so proud. He thought Derek would take over someday. But things started going wrong. Money would go missing from petty cash. Invoices would be altered. Your father tried to give him chances, tried to believe Derek would change. But it just got worse. Bill looked at me directly. Your father came to me 6 months before he died. He was heartbroken. He told me Derek had stolen over $40,000 from the business. He wanted to fire him, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Family is family, he said. So instead he changed his will. He made sure everything was split exactly down the middle, and he added that fraud clause. He knew Derek might try something after he was gone. I wiped tears from my eyes. Dad was protecting me even then. Bill nodded. Your father loved both his children, Taylor. But he wasn't blind to Derek's flaws. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, Derek tried everything to intimidate me. He showed up at my apartment building twice, just standing outside staring up at my window. He sent text messages alternating between threats and fake apologies. He even got some family members to call me begging me to drop the case for the sake of family unity. But I refused to back down. I'd started seeing a therapist to help process everything: the grief over losing Dad, the betrayal by Derek, the stress of the legal battle. It helped to talk to someone neutral, someone who could help me see clearly. This isn't about the money, my therapist said during one session. It's about respect, about being seen and valued. Your brother treated you like you were disposable, and you're standing up for yourself. That's incredibly brave. I hadn't thought of it that way. But she was right. This was about more than inheritance. It was about refusing to be erased, to be dismissed. It was about demanding the dignity and respect I deserved. My father had seen my worth. Now I needed to see it too. The preliminary hearing arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. I dressed carefully in a navy suit, trying to project confidence I didn't quite feel. Marcus met me outside the courthouse. Remember, he said, just answer the questions honestly. Don't let Peter Lawson rattle you. That's his strategy. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Derek was already there with his lawyer, both of them looking confident, almost smug. We didn't make eye contact. The judge, a stern woman named Victoria Hayes, called the hearing to order. This is a preliminary hearing to determine whether there's sufficient cause to proceed with a full trial, she announced. Let's begin. Peter Lawson stood first, painting Derek as a devoted son trying to honor their father's wishes while dealing with a grief-stricken sister who'd become irrational. It made my blood boil. Then Marcus presented our evidence. The real will. The notary's testimony about the fraudulent documents. Dad's letters. The bank statements showing Derek's theft. The judge's expression shifted from neutral to concerned as Marcus walked through each piece of evidence. When he finished, Judge Hayes looked at Derek. Mr. Anderson, did you or did you not present your sister with documents that misrepresented your father's will? Derek hesitated. I was trying to simplify the process, Your Honor. That's not an answer, the judge said sharply. Did you misrepresent the documents? Yes, Derek finally admitted, but only because I thought it would be easier. Judge Hayes made a note. This case will proceed to trial. Court adjourned. Derek's confidence had taken a visible hit after that hearing. Peter Lawson looked furious with him, probably realizing his client had just admitted to fraud in open court. As we left the courthouse, Derek caught up to me in the parking lot. Taylor, wait, he called out. I kept walking. Please just listen for 1 minute. Against my better judgment, I stopped and turned. Derek looked different somehow. Smaller. Less sure of himself. I messed up, okay, he said, running a hand through his hair. I shouldn't have lied to you about the papers. I panicked after Dad died. The business has debts, I have debts, and I thought if I could just get control of everything I could fix it. So you thought you'd steal my inheritance to pay your debts? I asked incredulously. Derek winced. It sounds bad when you say it like that. It is bad, Derek. It's theft. It's fraud. And it's a betrayal of everything Dad wanted. He looked down at his shoes. What if I agreed to the 50-50 split? What if we dropped all this and just followed Dad's original will? Would you drop the fraud claim? I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. No. Derek's head snapped up. What, why? Because you need to face consequences, I said. Because you stole from Dad while he was alive and tried to steal from me after he died. Because someone needs to hold you accountable. His face hardened. You're going to regret this, Taylor. We'll see, I replied and walked away. The next few weeks were a waiting game. Both sides prepared for trial. Marcus worked tirelessly gathering additional evidence, interviewing witnesses, strengthening our case. But then we hit a snag. Peter Lawson filed a motion claiming that Dad's letters were inadmissible as evidence because they were never officially witnessed or notarized. Marcus called me immediately. This is a problem, he admitted. The judge might rule that the letters are just personal correspondence without legal weight. My heart sank. But they proved Dad knew what Derek was doing. I know, Marcus said, and we'll argue that. But without them our case becomes weaker. We'd be relying mainly on the notary's testimony and the bank records. Is that enough, I asked. Honestly, I'm not sure. Estate fraud cases are tricky. If the judge decides Derek's actions were just poor judgment rather than malicious intent, he might get away with a slap on the wrist. I felt panic rising in my chest. So he could still win. It's possible, Marcus admitted gently. I'm not going to lie to you, Taylor. This got harder. That night I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Derek walking away with everything, laughing at how he'd fooled us all. The unfairness of it made me want to scream. But giving up wasn't an option. Dad had trusted me to fight for what was right. I couldn't let him down. I decided to take a different approach. If the letters weren't enough, I needed more evidence, something concrete that couldn't be disputed. I hired a private investigator named Frank Morrison. No, I needed someone else. I hired an investigator named Alex Turner, a former police detective who specialized in financial crimes. Alex, I said during our first meeting, my brother has been stealing from our family business for years. I need proof that will hold up in court. Alex reviewed everything I had: the bank statements, the letters, bills, testimony. Then he looked up. Your brother's sloppy, he said. Thieves usually are when they think they won't get caught. Give me 2 weeks. I'll find what you need. Those 2 weeks felt like months. I threw myself into work trying to distract myself from the constant anxiety. But every time my phone rang, I jumped, hoping it was Alex with good news. Finally the call came. I found something big, Alex said. Can you come to my office? I was there within an hour. Alex spread documents across his desk. Your brother didn't just steal from the family business, he explained. He also took out loans using your father's name as co-signer. 3 different loans totaling $90,000. And here's the kicker: all 3 applications were submitted after your father died. My jaw dropped. He forged Dad's signature. Alex nodded grimly. That's identity theft, Taylor. That's a felony. We've got him. Marcus was ecstatic when I showed him Alex's findings. This changes everything, he said, his eyes bright with excitement. This isn't just estate fraud anymore, this is criminal activity. We need to report this to the police immediately. But I hesitated. If we report Derek, he could go to jail. Despite everything he'd done, despite all the lies and theft and betrayal, he was still my brother. Some part of me still remembered the kid who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd scared away bullies at school, who'd held my hand at Mom's funeral. Marcus seemed to understand my hesitation. Taylor, I know this is hard. But your brother committed serious crimes. He needs to face real consequences, not just lose an inheritance battle. I know, I whispered. I need a minute. That night I sat alone in my apartment staring at the evidence. The forged loan applications with Dad's signature crudely copied. The bank statements showing Derek had already spent most of that $90,000 on luxury items, gambling debts, and failed business ventures. He wasn't going to stop. Even if I won the estate battle, Derek would just move on to his next scheme, his next victim. By staying silent, I'd be enabling him. By morning I'd made my decision. I called Marcus. File the police report. He needs to be held accountable. The police moved quickly once Marcus submitted the evidence. Within a week, Derek was arrested on charges of identity theft, fraud, and forgery. I wasn't there when it happened, but Bill called me immediately afterward. They took him from the business office, he said. He was shouting about how you set him up, how this was all a misunderstanding. I felt numb. No satisfaction, no triumph, just a deep sadness. This is really happening, I said, more to myself than to Bill. Bill was quiet for a moment. Your father would be proud of you, Taylor. I know that doesn't make this easier, but you did the right thing. The news spread through our family like wildfire. My phone exploded with calls and texts. Some relatives were supportive. Others accused me of being vindictive, of destroying Derek's life over money. Aunt Beatrice called me in tears. How could you do this to your own brother, she demanded. How could he steal from our dead father, I replied. How could he forge Dad's signature to take out fraudulent loans? She didn't have an answer for that. The preliminary trial date was moved up. With criminal charges pending, the civil case became almost secondary. But Marcus insisted we proceed with both. He stole from you, Taylor, Marcus said firmly. You deserve restitution for that beyond just getting your inheritance. Make him pay in every way possible. Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. If Taylor drops the civil suit Peter Lawson proposed to Marcus, Derek will plead guilty to reduce charges. He'll do community service, pay a fine, and the whole thing goes away. Marcus relayed the offer to me over coffee. What do you think, he asked. I thought about it. Thought about Derek getting off easy again. Thought about Dad's letter warning me not to let anyone take advantage of my kindness. No, I said. No deals. He doesn't get to skip consequences this time. Marcus nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. The criminal trial began 3 weeks later. I attended every day, sitting in the courtroom watching as prosecutor after prosecutor laid out Derek's crimes. The forged documents. The stolen money. The lies upon lies upon lies. Derek looked smaller each day, his expensive suit seeming to hang off his shoulders. His lawyer tried to paint him as a man struggling with grief who'd made poor choices. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Derek's face went white as the verdict was read. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. As they led Derek out of the courtroom, he looked at me. Just looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger, maybe. Or regret. I looked away. The sentencing hearing was brief. The judge, a different one from our preliminary hearing, reviewed Derek's record. Mr. Anderson, she said, her voice stern, you betrayed your family's trust repeatedly. You stole from your father while he was alive and attempted to defraud your sister after his death. Then when that didn't work, you committed identity theft and fraud on a massive scale. This shows a pattern of behavior that demands serious consequences. She sentenced him to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years probation. He was also ordered to pay back every penny he'd stolen plus damages. The courtroom was silent as Derek was led away. He didn't look at me this time. Outside, Aunt Beatrice confronted me. Are you happy now, she demanded, tears streaming down her face. Your brother's going to prison. I met her gaze steadily. I'm not happy, Aunt B. But I don't regret it either. Derek made his choices, now he has to live with them. She shook her head. You've torn this family apart. No, I said quietly. Derek did that. I just refused to be his victim. Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. Come on, Taylor. Let's go. As we walked away, I felt something shift inside me. Not happiness exactly, but something close to peace. The burden I'd been carrying since Dad died, since Derek's betrayal, since this whole nightmare began, started to lift. The civil case was almost anticlimactic after the criminal trial. With Derek in prison, unable to contest anything, the judge ruled quickly in my favor. Taylor Anderson is awarded her full 50% share of the estate as outlined in her father's will, the judge declared. Furthermore, due to the fraud clause outlined in said will, Derek Anderson's share is forfeit. The entire estate is awarded to Taylor Anderson. I sat in the courtroom barely processing the words. I'd won. Not just my half everything. The house. The business. The savings. All of it. Marcus shook my hand. Congratulations, Taylor. You fought hard for this. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. I'd expected that the case had gotten local media attention once the criminal charges came out. Miss Anderson, one reporter called out, "How do you feel about your brother going to prison?" I paused, considering my words carefully. I feel sad, I said honestly. Sad that things had to come to this. But my brother made his own choices and actions have consequences. I hope he uses his time in prison to reflect and become a better person. Another reporter pushed forward. What will you do with the inheritance? I smiled slightly. I'm going to honor my father's memory. He built something meaningful and I'm going to make sure his legacy continues. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Marcus guided me away from the crowd. Well handled, he said. Very diplomatic. The weeks after the trial were strange. I moved into Dad's house, unable to stay in my small apartment anymore. Walking through the rooms felt like walking through memories. Dad's reading chair by the window. The kitchen where Mom had taught me to bake. The office where I'd found his letters. But slowly the house started to feel like mine. I repainted the walls, donated most of Derek's belongings to charity, kept only a few meaningful items from our childhood. I took over Dad's business with Bill's help. The company was struggling. Derek's theft and mismanagement had taken their toll, but it was salvageable. I worked 12-hour days learning everything I could about the industry. Bill was patient, teaching me the ropes, introducing me to clients. You're a natural at this, he said one afternoon. Your father would be so proud. Some family members eventually reached out to apologize. Aunt Beatrice sent a card admitting she'd been wrong to judge me so harshly. A few cousins called wanting to rebuild relationships. I accepted some apologies. Others I didn't. I was learning that family wasn't just about blood. It was about respect, trust, and genuine care. Anyone who couldn't see that didn't deserve space in my life. 6 months after Derek's sentencing, I received a letter from him. It came from the prison with his inmate number stamped on the envelope. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Dear Taylor, he'd written. I know I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness. I know I've hurt you in ways I can't take back. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not just because I got caught, but because I finally understand what I did. I destroyed our family's trust. I dishonored Dad's memory. I treated you like you didn't matter when you've always been the better person, the better sibling. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I've been thinking about the kind of man I became. Somewhere along the way I convinced myself that money and success were the only things that mattered. I forgot about honor and integrity and family. I forgot the values Mom and Dad tried to teach us. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I'll ever forgive myself. But I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. Trying to be the brother you deserved. I sat on the porch reading and rereading the letter. Part of me wanted to crumple it up, throw it away. But another part, the part that remembered the good times from our childhood, wanted to believe him. I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe someday. But not yet. A year after everything ended, I stood in Dad's office, now my office, looking out at the garden Mom had planted decades ago. The business was thriving. I'd hired new staff, implemented better financial controls, expanded into new markets. What Dad had built was growing again, stronger than before. I'd also started a foundation in his name, helping families navigate estate planning and elder care. Making sure other people wouldn't face the confusion and vulnerability that Derek had exploited in me. The work felt meaningful, like I was honoring Dad's memory in a real, tangible way. I thought about Derek sometimes. According to his lawyer, he was a model prisoner, taking classes, participating in therapy programs. Maybe he really was changing. Maybe not. Either way, it wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'd learned something important through all of this. Standing up for yourself isn't cruel or vindictive. It's necessary. Demanding respect and honoring your own worth isn't selfish. It's survival. Dad had known that. He'd tried to teach me through his letters, through the way he'd lived his life. I finally understood. As the sun set over the garden, I raised a glass to his memory. "Thank you, Dad," I whispered. "For believing in me. For protecting me. For teaching me that some fights are worth fighting." I smiled, feeling truly at peace for the first time in over a year. This was my life now. My business. My home. My future. And I'd fought for every bit of it.